It's like the renaissance when it comes to transcriptions.
That's enabling the people to be more present and intentional in their conversations.
And they're kind of collaborating together to help solve a problem.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Kim Larson. I'm a Client Success Manager here at Luminoso.
Hi, everyone. Daniel Hong, Chief Marketing Officer at Minerva CQ. So very excited to be here.
First thing that we want to ask is, what are we trying to learn and take away from the conversation? Are we trying to solve something immediately? What are we trying to learn that we can make broader systemic changes, right? The research is not the one that's answering the frontline phone calls, but we can learn from each other as we try to grow and develop our organizations. Most important thing in both of these circumstances is to flip perspectives, practice our empathy, and consider what is the other person getting out of talking to us. What incentives or disincentives do they have to be honest? If I make my problem sound worse than it is, maybe I get a cut in line. If I make it sound not so bad, maybe I won't get fired. What are the pros and cons to being honest, and what are the incentives in place? We want to make sure we're reflecting on that. Historically, there's been kind of an approach to conversations where we are looking either for adherence to the script. You start the intro question, hi, how can I help you? They describe their problem. Did you try resetting your computer? Did you turn it off and turn it back on again? They're like, yes, obviously, but we had to do the checklist scripts. We want to have some structure because there's a reason we ask all these questions. We need to know that we hit all the steps, but we also genuinely want to understand the circumstances around each of those pieces. As the moderators, as the folks in power, either as administrators, as call center support agents over customers, we want to make sure that we're setting up an environment to facilitate what we need. If we need honesty, we need to make sure that we're setting up an environment for them to be honest.
I think you nailed it. But the reason why way back in the early kind of mid 2000s was transcription, the technology behind it, the speech recognition was not accurate. So there's a lot of manual intervention having to clean all the transcripts and things like that. But we're in an exciting time right now where the algorithms are a lot better. We have deep neural nets. There's a lot more compute power and it's a lot more affordable, making these transcriptions a lot more accurate. So now the data that people are able to work with and analyze is the best it can be. So it's like the renaissance when it comes to transcription. So this is absolutely on point on like what are the best approaches to analyzing transcripts. So
as the technology improves, that labor is being reduced. That's enabling the people to be more present and intentional in their conversations from person to person. And I think that's really encouraging because we're going to reemphasize the importance of being present when we're having these conversations. Well, why are we talking to people in the first place? Why are we using our working hours, which are limited? Talking has unique benefits and unique detractors. Writing has unique benefits and unique detractors. The quant metrics have unique benefits and have unique detractors, right? So if we can record these, pool them together that we can then work with to figure out like, well, what are the priorities? Where are the friction points? Dan and I were talking earlier about when do people actually end up picking up the phone? And it's because they tried fixing it on their own. They tried to wait it out. They tried to talk to the chat bot that sent them in useless circles. And by the time they get desperate enough to call someone at the call center, they've had, several friction points hyping up the emotion. And those are going to be the more dramatic issues than the things that are solved via the chatbot or solved via the FAQ center. So what are the benefits of talking? Efficiency. I have said more in the last 15 minutes or so than I would write to most people in an email, and definitely not as much in the same amount of time. There's also permanency. There are no takebacks as we are speaking. So if something slips, it is in the transcript record, whereas in a written form, I may edit the sentence, rephrase it, delete it. Pros and cons to that permanency. There's also comprehensiveness. A lot of researchers have seen these answers in their open-ended text fields for why did you quit playing the game? Because I wasn't winning. Consumer goods or something. Like take a minute to think about the thing and like give it another shot. Like, you don't have to rush to answer right away. Like, I'm here to understand your experience. So you want to make sure that we're creating space for people to communicate that. Structured interviews.
Of course, there are certain things on compliance, right, that they have to read like a PUC compliance statement because of legislation or whatever business rules that they have. But studies have shown that having strict agent script there is not very conducive, because every customer is different and you have to kind of go with the flow. So what we've noticed is when we provide like a dialogue suggestion, it's not say this specifically unless it's compliance. Say something in this vicinity so they know what it is that you're saying, and use your kind of intertwine that with your own personality and kind of like what the brand is trying to push. So I think that having more fluidity in the conversation is important, especially when it comes to the customer experience, and to not feel as robotic for that customer in that interaction.
And I think naturally we have there's the term code switching, right? Where you may speak one way in one context and speak an entirely different way in another context.
Mm-hmm.
And that facilitates better understanding and communication between folks. There's a reason why we do it. And when we prescribe the language used, it creates barriers in the communication. Unstructured interviews, working with open-ended text, and they're trying to find answers that aren't necessarily in the text because they weren't prompted. In unstructured interviews, there's not an order. So in a transcript situation, that can be extra chaotic because you can't parse out like, when did they talk about packaging? When were they talking about the cost or their salary or whatever? Well, what's unique to people who hated this? It's all together. It's in a pool. We're going to have to do some more digging. So one of the things that we can do when navigating unstructured interviews is to kind of wrangle the audience's attention in the way that a therapist might do it. So some moderators may want to model a behavior or model some language, and the respondent will go, yeah, like that. Well, now you have the modeled language that's scaled across a variety of interviews, and the respondent who's not saying the words on their own. So when we say use like a therapist approach, some of that language might be, you mentioned packaging. Tell me more. You mentioned feeling anxious. Can you elaborate? I see. How did that make you feel? Having these kind of questions allow us to only analyze, only transcribe the respondent's feedback, because then they're using the language like, oh, the packaging was great. Now we have packaging and great that we can associate together. We want to be able to encourage people to use the whole language as if it were a monologue, kind of like what we'd have in a product review, not muddying it with the interviewer's questions or prompts. Encourage the respondent to respond with complete sentences. We want to avoid like, yeah, that. Say it. Say the whole sentence, because that's what we want to capture. Putting all the context together. What are the 3 best things about working here? My manager, salary, my hours. What are the 3 worst things about working here? My manager, my salary, my hours. The context detached isn't going to give us what we need. The focus group, a whole bunch of people who are riffing off of each other's ideas, playing off each other's ideas, challenging each other, building, and taking it in an exploratory way. And they're doing this based on how they perceive other people at the table, right? They may take a more firm stance, a more passive stance. And that has a lot of benefits, but also a lot of challenges. So we want to make sure that we are being creative in how we are taking notes in those circumstances. If we want to take the transcript from the focus group overall, my recommendation would be to supplement it. If the respondents are taking individual notes or summarizing their experiences and takeaways, that could be really interesting. Like, yes, they had the dialogue, but that could be like the mental warm-up. Or if we want to map their notes to what they said individually, some people like to observe and think before they speak, and being able to compare those 2 sources could be really interesting and insightful, because what we say out loud is not always directly correlated to what we say and believe in our heads. And include observer and moderator notes and takeaways. That third party, I saw this person shifting when we talked about that topic. So while they didn't say anything, perhaps there was some discomfort in this subject. Anything you want to add to this, Dan?
No, I think you pretty much got it. I'm learning and taking notes.
Good, good. So taking notes is something that, like, yes, it's supplementary, and there's always the recording online if you want to watch it after, right? There's also semi-structured interviews. So that takes fixed bits of the structured, but also gives us some space to elaborate, look for complete answers, and it has more structure than the completely unstructured reviews. Creating the discussion guide. So this is pretty standard for semi-structured interviews, where there's a list of high-level questions, and it's up to the moderator's discretion to make sure that each question is fully fleshed out to satisfaction. I'm going to have to include delineators. So as the moderator, I need to parse when the conversation is starting and when I want to segment each of the information chunks that we're going to go through. I'm going to use terms like "let's dive in" to separate my introduction from the topics that I want to study. Tell me about yourself. What are 3 things about you that make you unique?
I love photography. I'm a big coral reef tank nerd, and I'm a big speech recognition geek.
Now, as the researcher, I'm going to map that with what I know about Daniel's age, Daniel's location, Daniel's income bracket, and now I have more metadata plus the identifiers that make him genuinely unique outside of it, because there may be a demographic information piece that he shared with me that I was not considering that maybe I should have. Now I want to understand the topic. This is the section where I'm going to try to have him define what words mean, as if I know nothing at all. Whether we're using words like aggression or playful, the more he's defining what the words mean to him, the more I have to work with when I'm creating my clusters and themes. Well, how do you feel about dog walks in general?
I'm happy when I do it. I feel that the dog is happy, and you're living in the moment. Hopefully I captured some feeling words there.
Yeah. So we prepped Dan for this kind of exercise, and he asked a really good question of, like, what are some feeling words? We have to be cognizant of the access our respondents have to the vocabulary that we are understanding. So Dan picked the word happy. When kids are learning their feeling words, you start with happy or bad, and then from bad you split from sad to angry, and you start to get more nuance. Not everyone uses their feeling words every day, every week. So sometimes we need to put the words in front of folks. I'm not telling them what words to use, I'm not guiding them, but I may need to provide some visual assistance or some inspiration for them to respond to. So here we have an emotion grid, flu checks wheel. We can't find things that are not in the data. People may be more articulate if they have the resources in front of them. So if they mention this, like, how likely are they actually to get one? Things like, what do you remember about X, is a reflective question that's very similar to this thing that we're familiar with CSAT scores. CSAT is a reflective question. How satisfied are you? It's internally focused.
There's a famous chef. His name is Thomas Keller. He is a French Laundry and Per Se in New York, so he's up there in the upper echelons of the culinary world. And there's an awesome TED Talks that he spoke at, and he said the most rewarding experience for him as a chef is when he asks his dinner guests, like, how was the dinner? And they say, oh, it reminded me of that spectacular meal I had in Monaco or in Spain, or that spectacular experience. And for him, that just really meant that it was very successful to bring them back in a time when they're very happy or they really remember those moments. And to me, like, when I heard that, as an aha moment, because customer experience is really about cultivating the moments and understanding and anticipating the needs of the customer and serving them and helping them resolve their issue and connecting with them. So I thought that was, like, really cool when Thomas Keller says that, and that's what he's striving for.
I've been surprised by how many teams and businesses have been able to flip the narrative, right? I think the dentist used to have, like, a terrible reputation, a generally unpleasant experience, and made it positive. They make the office an enjoyable place to be, and that helped the business, and that we always showed up on time. We never missed an appointment. And there's these little details that matter. You can create memories in unexpected places. Then we have the NPS question, this advice question that is external. How do I think someone else would feel about it? I may think that I am satisfied, but I would not recommend it. Or I'm not satisfied, but it could be great for someone else. I believe in the potential. It just wasn't a fit for me. Capturing both of those, not just as a number rating, but also as a story associated with the number rating. These are things that we can capture in surveys, but they may be something that may be captured with more fleshed out detail in a conversation.
There's a lot of metrics that companies use to gauge like the customer experience and the quality of the interaction. And of course, CSAT is the most commonly used, and we saw NPS, Net Promoter Score, really increase over the last like decade and a half or so. And then there's a whole concept of easy, like effort. Like
effort score. We love effort scores.
Yeah, exactly. And I was actually talking to someone from Uber the other day, and they focus on effort, but they also focus on kind of the star ratings, and they just really want to simplify that and not so much hang on NPS. So there's some different schools of thought, and depends on your business, but there's a lot of different metrics, and I think we'll see some more interesting metrics kind of pan out over the next like decade or so.
For utilities, I think effort score makes a lot of sense, right? I want it to be as in the background as possible because it's just working all the time. I'm not looking for a wow when I turn on my lights, right? I want to take it for granted. Analytics are something that I think people want a wow. And if it's in that background of like, if it's just going, if it's just something, it's not making a difference, it's not solving problems. There's like the preventative perspective, and then there's the solving perspective. And depending on where you are in the solution space, that's going to impact which drivers are going to be most important to your business.
You know, in my past life at Forrester, we really looked at the impact of emotion. Emotion is a critical determinant that is often overlooked in the customer experience. I'm sure you are a fan of Chewy perhaps, and you've seen some of those awesome stories. So when a Chewy customer service rep sends the customer a gift, maybe they lost their dog, and they do it out of their own pocket, right? It's just an amazing kind of connection that you have, and to be able to kind of capture their dialogue and understanding the intimacy there, and the connections made and the emotion, and then kind of the after, you know, the actions taken, I think is pretty interesting. Like when I talk to other brands about Chewy, and they're in the pet food industry, we cannot replicate that. Chewy is unique and different, and you kind of see that from like Zappos started perhaps that movement of let's get rid of the standard operational metrics and just focus on the customer and getting them to resolve their issue no matter how long it takes.
When you enable your employees, when you enable your team to experience the emotions, when we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If you're keeping your employees at this level of survival, they don't have the bandwidth to go above and beyond for customers. You can't spend your personal money on someone who lost their dog if you can't pay rent.
So Minerva, we have what we call collaborative intelligence platform. And what that does is we're essentially combining human intellect with artificial intelligence. So our first kind of focus area is contact center. So you have contact center agents with AI working with them, and they're kind of collaborating together to help solve a problem. So how our technology works, and it's called Agent Assist, our Minerva is listening in on the conversation and transcribing in real time that conversation, and our models are essentially using the real-time transcript to kick off the guidance for that agent in real time. So there's entity extraction, there's sentiment analysis, and all these other models are working off that transcript, that dialogue while it's happening, and we are giving that agent guidance with dialogue suggestions, behavioral cues, the right workflows to use, as well as servicing up the right knowledge for that agent in that moment when the customer's asking a question. We liken it to having a driving navigation app like Waze. So you're driving and then you have the real-time directions, and if you miss your turn, it's okay. It'll still dynamically reroute you. So we like to say we're like the driving navigation app for contact center agents.
But we want to recognize that back channels exist. So there's things I say to your face, there's things I say in the form, and there's things I tell people outside of the communication methods that we control. So the employee survey that we send to all the employees, the call center agents, the support agents, et cetera. And we may do interviews like the one-on-one check-in. Hey, how was your week today? Any challenges we need to tackle? How are you feeling? Do you need to take time off? Those conversations matter. But we want to also recognize that there are the backdoor channels of Glassdoor, Blind, Fishbowl, LinkedIn groups, the table at Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks where you can see everyone that's walking in and you talk to your coworker really candidly about like, oh, this happened. This is true for any circumstance, right? Employee is a really easy example, but customers have that as well. What are they saying to the call center agent versus what are they saying online? We want to be able to track all of that and kind of like close that circle.
The customer kind of sphere that you just talked about and the customer interaction is absolutely. There's also the agent side, because attrition rates are abysmal in the contact center. I think during the pandemic, it was like 58% was the industry average. That's a monthly agent attrition rate, which is really high. We're hovering around 35%. You could glean kind of stress from how the agents are talking to the customer. So that's what we've seen in like transcript. You can actually look at some agent sentiment. You could kind of see, are they on calls longer or shorter, so on and so forth. And you could kind of see some fatigue there if you're really doing some analysis. It helps solve for that agent attrition problem and what leaders need to address to keep them engaged and retain them as employees.
Contact centers are a unique application in what the problems they're solving and the problems they experience on the customer side and on the agent side. They're like the first line of defense. So if we've researched something and it's been implemented and it's not going well, the contact center may be the first entity to know. They will be the first ones to recognize like this is coming up a lot. And the workaround that we're giving is a workaround and not a solution.
I like how you said it's kind of the first line responders. We saw that in the pandemic when everyone's just calling in. It's like 4-hour waits because they need to reschedule certain travel. What's going on with my air travel or hotel reservations? But even before that, you could glean a lot of insights from interactions. I remember we had a client. These agents started getting calls and questions about, hey, do I get a discount on my insurance if I buy winter tires? And that just kind of came out of the blue. And these agents are all, no, I don't know. And the supervisors were able, like after that day and the next few days, they saw that spike, then they were able to react and do some competitive analysis. One of their competitors in the Canadian market, they were offering like a 30% discount or something on insurance if you actually buy winter tires. So then they were able to correlate that and then drive that back into the business and honor that same type of promotion. But it just kind of shows that people react. And today, because of social media and just connectiveness of the internet, information gets shared a lot quicker. So these contact center people are getting barraged with these calls, and that could happen instantly. So businesses need to be more agile and react to those environments and really kind of listen in on those conversations.
Thank everyone for attending. It was good to see you all. We hope to see you in the next video, and follow us on LinkedIn. We have another one next month. So make sure you sign up and register for that. All right. Thanks, everyone.